All right, everybody, welcome to today's episode of We As Start Talking. I am Gareth, one of your hosts, and today I am joined on the show by Micheal Hynard. We're going to get into the episode in just a second, and I'm going to introduce you to my amazing guest. Just before we do that, please, a few little bit of housekeeping. Firstly, thank you for listening. Please, if you can subscribe so you don't miss any episodes, if you can like any of the shows, share a review, drop a rating, any of those things you can do on social media to get the conversation out there, because these platforms truly grow through support. So we really appreciate that. The other way you can do that is head over to patreon.com, and you can find us at patreon.com/start talking, where you can subscribe to an exclusive membership for We As Start Talking, where we have exclusive content, merchandise, and a load of other cool stuff coming down the pipeline. So we really appreciate that support, and for the price of a cup of coffee you can join the community and just support these amazing shows moving forward. All right, housekeeping's out of the way, so we are going to dig into the episode. First of all, Micheal, how are you today?
I am fantastic. The sun is shining, life is good.
Yep, love it. We got the sunshine, and I'm sitting in my basement in the dark of winter in just outside Toronto, Canada, and Micheal is in Auckland. You're still in Auckland, I assume.
Still in Auckland, New Zealand,
Yeah,
yeah.
still in Auckland, so in the bright midday sun. So a little bit different, but that's the beauty of remote podcast recordings. So we're going to jump into the show, but I'm just going to talk a little bit about, our guest that we're going to be listening to today, as well as listening to me, and a little bit about kind of how we met and why this conversation came about. So Micheal is the CEO and founder of Functional Adaptive Movement, based in Auckland, New Zealand, and kind of a passion for health and fitness. This is how we connected first of all. And then prior to that, an athlete competing at a very high level for South Africa in Jiu-Jitsu, and then moving kind of from that athletic world into fitness, getting into the world of CrossFit and the kind of general fitness industry as a whole, as well as lots of roles in sales and leadership and things kind of along the journey. And then we're going to get a little bit into, the kind of the genesis and also, I guess, the evolution of functional adaptive movement on the show today. But basically, you are doing amazing work, and I read through and I really love the mission statement. So the mission of functional adaptive movement is to empower differently abled people to live more independent lives. So I really love that. I've done some great shows about these things recently, and I'm excited to hear about it. So I'm just going to hand it over to Micheal, because I did a very brief intro. He's going to do a proper intro of himself and talk a little bit through his journey. And and then we're going to dig in. I'm sure I'm going to have 1,000 questions. So I'm going to pass the mic to you.
Awesome. The mic to mic, right?
Yes.
Anyway, thanks, Gareth, and thanks to everyone who's listening. So being a South African, I'm going to try not to speak too quickly. I know that that's a problem, but and hopefully my accent is not too thick. Where do I start? Born in South Africa, did the whole military thing, loved the military, wanted to be a professional soldier. Did a couple of years, then got very, very sick and exited from the military. And then, as Gareth mentioned, kind of into the corporate world. So spent a number of years selling, moving from selling product to the IT industry. Got married, did the marriage thing. And then in 1995, Siobhan was born, our daughter. And a year later, we discovered that she was living with cerebral palsy. So it was kind of a major shock horror back in those days, because technology is nowhere near as advanced as what it is today. What I do for differently able folk wasn't available in those days. So it's been a journey. Beautiful person. And by a strange set of circumstances, I still get to train her. So it's pretty cool. Thanks to technology today, I get to work with her once a week, and we have some fun as father and daughter and online while we train the folk in the UK. One of the joys of my work was, as a salesperson, is I got to work with some amazing organizations that got me to travel around the world. And that led me to, in 2008, deciding I wanted to go work somewhere else. And my partner at that stage and I had booked to go to Australia. Next minute, I've got myself a job in Auckland and didn't know nothing about Auckland and about New Zealand, nothing. So on the 24th of February, 2009, we touched down in Auckland. and I instantly knew I was home. That's kind of the weirdest thing. I just kind of, this is where I want to be. I want to stay. And that's was also the time of the last financial recession or crisis that we had. And I got hit by that quite badly. 2011 was made redundant. And this is where the story just jumps back a little bit, is back in the day, in 94 in South Africa, when the apartheid government was going out and new government was coming in, all white men were going to lose their jobs, etc., etc. And I kind of panicked, and at that stage, I just discovered Bill Phillips's Body for Life program. And I was like, yeah, man, this is the new best thing since ever. And I jumped into it. And that's when I decided to go and study to become a personal trainer and a gym manager. And the following year, Siobhan was born. We suddenly realized there was something going on. And I then, my ex and I decided, no, we're gonna start planning now to get Siobhan to do anything. So we literally invested thousands upon thousands of dollars in every possible therapy to get her as better as what we could. And that included hyperbaric oxygen therapy treatment, physio, speech, OT, the whole 9 yards. We did everything. And when she was about 3 or 4, I think, we decided, no, let's try martial arts. And I happened to be working at Dell Computer, and one of the guys, the one night, we were chatting, and I mentioned something about it, and next thing I was on the floor in the office, and I was like, okay, this stuff got real. And the following week we started training, and I fell in love with it. I honestly fell in love. So I studied traditional Jiu-Jitsu. So we kind of did a little bit of everything, which was judo, aikido, Filipino stick knife fighting, kushu jitsu, which is pressure point fighting, a British form of jiu-jitsu called spirit combat, and it just lumped on. And the sensei one day said, hey, we're going to go to a competition. And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool, go to a competition. I've never competed. Walked away with the national title, my first competition. And next thing, I'm representing South Africa. I represented for 2 years. I got two caps for South Africa, fought in Greece and fought in South Africa. And it wasn't long after that it was actually during that time in Greece that I just had ACL repair. And all this time, I kind of not dabbled too much in personal training per se, but little did I know that I was actually doing kind of CrossFit style training to keep myself and the team fit. And when I came to New Zealand, that's when I really started to suck the Kool-Aid and kind of did my level 1, and then I did my level 2, did my CrossFit Kids, defense, the whole 9 yards, because I understood what I had started with Bill Phillips' stuff was kind of the same thing. It was high intensity stuff, but I really liked the various faculties that I found within the CrossFit realm. Then jumping forward to 2011, I started driving around Auckland in my little beaten up RAV4, training mums and kids at community centers because I couldn't get a job. Nobody was hiring salespeople. And it wasn't long. I got an intro into Les Mills, and I just lapped it up. I took everything I could get there. I was working across two sites. It was Britomart and Victoria Street, on the gym floor, and quickly developed from scratch again to get into a new career. And I loved it. I worked my butt off. Long hours. I was kind of, we had the maintenance guy, Will Brown, and I were taking competitions to see who was going to get to open the gym first at 4:30 in the morning, you know. That was mental, but anyway. And just through a range of great opportunities, I got the opportunity to become a coach at CrossFit HPU, which was based within the Les Mills structure, and very quickly developed from there to start a kids program. And the story of FAM is actually around what happened on a toilet. It started on a crapper, believe it or not. So there's lovely teacher from Sunnydean School, which is now Central Auckland Specialist School, happened to be sitting on the toilet at Les Mills. And on the back of the door was a pamphlet for our CrossFit Kids program. And she figured, no, well, why can't my kids come and do this? And anyway, she met with me, and I actually bumped into Jordan on Friday, and we had a good giggle about this. And out of that, she said, hey, what about my kids coming? I said, yeah, just let them come and join our class. I don't see what the problem is. And she said, no, we got to understand they're a little bit different. And we panicked. I had a friend of mine with me, and I roped her in, Sarah Lee, and we kind of sat down and figured out how we're going to do this. And then we got going, and 15 kids came in, and it was our first foray. There's no training for what we do. There are courses now, but back then, 8 years ago, there was nothing. It was all fly by wire, quickly Google what is autism, and then what is spina bifida, and trying to understand it, but using the knowledge of what we've studied, applying it to physiology, applying it to all the skills that I gained from the corporate world, emotional intelligence, empathy, body language, just bolting this all together, started to create a cocktail that was hugely successful. And bolt onto that my craziness and my boundless energy. But from 15 athletes, it grew to 140 athletes very, very quickly. Les Mills started to get pretty grumpy with me because I was kept blocking off the car parks with disabled signs, and van after van was coming in, and the gate was always open, and it was just a nightmare. And then 3 years ago now, my goodness me, 3 years ago, Les Mills started renovating the building, and kind of was what I needed to get to where I got to today. And that was they were going to close the gym down, and they did. They shut down HPU, and it was traumatic and all that. And I kind of got wind of that and decided to go on my own. I thought, oh, well, screw it. I'm just going to go out and try this out there, And literally what I do now is I go around to gyms around Auckland, and I've asked them and begged them and pleaded and negotiated for a small fee to raise up the doors when their classes aren't running. And we have 5 venues now across Auckland where we run our program. We've just opened up in Wellington. Wellington. We've got a coach down there. Negotiations underway right now for Christchurch and Hamilton for next year. And thanks to COVID, we're international. We beam our classes across the globe internationally. We're currently, at last count, I think we were sitting at around about 230 athletes a week on average that we work with, and growing. It's just growing. And, I'm still learning. I'm still training. I'm still figuring things out. There's always a gotcha. There's, in this game, there's always somebody that's coming up with some new disability that I've never heard of, and okay, let's research that. But the basics of what I've learned as a personal trainer and from the CrossFit world, it's just that easy to apply. And these people are just human beings. They are just simply our brothers and sisters, and we just treat them like that. That's where the magic comes in, and I think that's been kind of the key to our success. So 3 years ago, when we moved out, we changed from the adaptive PT, kind of get more of a brand going, came up with functional adaptive movement, tried to set up the website, and which we're busy updating. So hopefully by the time this goes out, we've got our new website going. But it's super exciting, Gareth, that, it's a crazy journey that it's been going, and it's, I say to my students, so we work very closely with the universities. I think that's important to dive this in. I cannot do this by myself. It's absolutely, it's exhausting job, but we've tied up with the unis in Auckland. So we work with the nursing, physio, OT, and sport rec faculties, and we offer the students the opportunity to come and have placements with that. So they're either doing a work placement or a co-op placement. Co-ops, we get to do a little bit of project work. So we get some stuff that we can apply into the business. And on the flip side, we also get volunteers. And it's been, I think over the last 7 years that we've had that relationship, we've had probably close to, I would be guessing about 300 to 400 students.
Wow.
That have had an exposure to differently abled folk, which to me is fantastic, because it's just kind of, you're not going to be the next national coach of rugby or American football or tennis or whatever it is, but there's other people out there that could do with their skill set, and just the opportunity for them to experience that is awesome. So the volunteer side of the business is really, really crucial and fundamental. And it's good to volunteer. It's good for your soul.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
Yeah.
What
That's the
a
largest version.
that's and the listeners now are not going to be surprised by me saying this, but as predicted, delivered with the enthusiasm and the energy that I expected. I talk a lot about energy on the show, and people often ask me, like, how do you find guests to get on your podcast? And I said, well, I do connect with people that I don't know, and I have them that I don't have physical connections with, in the past. However, a lot of people that I choose to come on the show I'm attracted to energy. And this is a big realization in my life later in life now than maybe when I was younger, but I've always been attracted to energy, and your energy is infectious, but also the curiosity and the critical thinking is something that always stuck in my mind from our conversations. And as you can hear, and as the listeners can hear right now, that's no surprise that, Mike's given us this story with his enthusiasm and his obvious passion that you can hear. I can see it on his face, and you can hear it in his voice. So, and such important work. It's such a, so I don't have 1,000 questions. I have like 2,500 questions, but let's start with a couple. I think a couple of things that stand out for me a lot are, firstly, when it comes to kind of where you are now and that journey, and a big part of creating the awareness around diversity and around what's so important is raising that awareness around that, as you mentioned, right? Why can't these kids just come in and train in this program? And there's no hesitation in that statement from you. And I can imagine there was no hesitation at the time. However, there would be a lot of hesitation in that. And I just think, and it's interesting, I recorded a show a couple of days ago, and in that show we were talking a lot, and the lady that was on the show, Kim, she was talking about her kind of business, which is support services, and she was teaching me amazing things about diversity and inclusion with a lot of the, a lot of the conditions and stuff that you were talking about. And, she deals with kids and adults with autism and many other kind of neural based things. And she taught me some great words I had never heard, like neurotypical and neurodiverse, which were brand new things to me that I'd never heard of, which was a fascinating conversation. And what she spoke a lot was integration and the impact on like the next generation. And that sounds like something that I don't even know if this is a question, but it's just a statement, I guess, that working with the co-op students at those universities and exposing them to the diversity and how to act, how to be, or how not to act, I guess, because just act normally around people that do have, like you said, they have different abilities, or, or they're diverse in whatever it is that they're managing, and exposing those very, impressionable university age people with those skills is gonna make a big difference in the future generation. So I just want to applaud you for that.
Right.
Is that something?
I think you've touched on something there, Gareth. One of we had an aha moment after our first lockdown here in New Zealand, and we had one of our athletes come in. Beautiful person, Mackenzie. She's 20 plus years old, living with cerebral palsy, classification level 4, non-verbal, with dystonia, so she's moving around a lot. And Provisio, she has a master's degree in business communication, and she sails in the ocean. She has the capacity to use her right leg and control her right leg and her right toe. So she types everything on her talking device using her right foot. And we were training the one day, and I had the students, and I'm explaining to the students what's going on, and obviously not in the third person sense. I'm talking to Mackenzie, and I'm chatting to her, etc. And later that night, I get an email from her. Hey, Mike, you talk too much, and I've heard that speech so many times. We need to change it up. I'm here to help you. And the beauty of it, I was just like, one forgets how intelligent everyone really is, and very quickly you forget now and again that, hang on, just because there's an intellectual disability or a learning thing going on, or they're non-verbal, they're so connected. They are so connected. It's just amazing. And what came out of that was something amazing. We now have what we call an e-guide. So when we have new students coming in, to kind of take away Mike's talking too much in the session, we mail out this document that she started it for us. She actually designed it, put it together, and it's this great working document that all the coaches have access to. So we're constantly adding to it, that we send out to the guys so that they come in forewarned and armed so that they can kind of have a grasp. And we've listed in there, I think we have a list of about 35 different disabilities that we have in our program, and each one is linked to a video so that the guys can kind of, or the girls can also have a nosy, see what they're going to get themselves into, so that they can come in and actually do some positive, proactive stuff right at the get-go. And just of late, we've just realized that whole inclusion and integration thing, how much we still need to do. And the latest thing is learning sign. We have a number of athletes that have multiple disabilities. So they have, for example, cerebral palsy, and they're living with deafness, and trying to communicate with these guys. So, so it's kind of like, oh, hello, out comes the phone, out comes notes, and I'm busy typing. It's like, that's not how you should be doing it. So we're learning all the time. And that's the uniqueness of our program, because we have, in our classes, we don't just have an autistic class, and we don't just have a CP class. We have a number of classes where there are numerous things going on, wheelchairs and walkers and sticks and visually impaired. And it's so cool to see that kind of level of integration and inclusion going on. But as a coach, it ups the ante exponentially. So I kind of I'm busy fast tracking on how to learn sign, and then I found out there's two types of sign. There's the American sign and the British sign. Oh, fucking hell. So there's always something. But I think, one of the occupational therapists brought that up to me, and I didn't realize it, but I'm actually becoming quite an advocate for human rights and the rights of folk living with disabilities. And I find myself voicing when I hear atrocities, and the sad thing is, atrocities are still happening today. Even, I hear stories of things that shouldn't be happening, and we get quite going about it. So I quite like it when you mentioned the human rights thing, because it's their human right to exercise. It's their human right to live a more independent life. It's their human right to get a bit fitter and stronger, so that maybe they can get a job, that they can buy a house and get a car and just live more independently. That's their human right. And yeah, I'm glad you said that, because it's exactly where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's so important, and we're forever raising awareness. And one thing I love that you're doing is just that note about, how one of your athletes brought this idea of creating kind of almost like a document for everybody. And I get sometimes in these conversations, I find it difficult, because I'm trying to raise my awareness, and, not just through the show, but through every walk of life. And often it's you should just be more inclusive because you should. And I have an allergic reaction to that, because I'm like, I don't know what I don't know. And it sounds like you're really taking the opposite end of that, which is not the defensive side of it for your athletes in your world, is to say, here's the information. Like, you don't know what you don't know. So here's what you need. Here's where you can learn. Here's what what you're being exposed to. Because if I don't know how to approach, and, shout out to Good Life, company I work for. We're doing a lot of great work with diversion and inclusivity. So I'm exposed to a lot of that amazing information. But we have a lot of issues where people come in, and, they may be managing something, and our associates might not know how to address or how to speak. And you get a lot of those situations where they'll speak to the support worker and not the person. And like you kind of mentioned, right? So it's just knowing that and understanding. But if you don't know that, you don't know it, like, help, and I know it's our responsibility as, as human beings on the planet to learn those things. But the more and more people, like yourself and your organization are doing, the more aware we all are, and more aware of these students are, that's building the foundation to kind of overcome that, right? So we're getting to the point in the world, hopefully, where everyone's human rights are equal. And let's be quite honest, that spans across everything. It doesn't matter if a person's got a disability, the color of their skin, the culture they grew up in. It makes no difference. Like, it's all under the same umbrella, if you like, so to speak.
Totally agree with you. Agree with you. And I think, it's the difference that we can make. It comes through not just from, on our website, we've got our some of the qualitative feedback from our clients, etc. And but sometimes from the student's perspective, to study is hard work and it's stressful. And, now and again, we get the email from a student that will say something along the lines of, I was about to throw in the towel, but just spending a couple of weeks with you and your organization and the clients, I kind of have a new zest for life, and I now know where I'm going to go. I'm going to study, and I'm going to go into neurophysio or something to that effect. And I'm kind of like, yes, cool. This is exciting because people are seeing that, and I suppose this is where the corporate side of my world comes in, is when the first meeting that I have with students when they're coming on their placement for the first time, besides they've got their little document, is right, have you guys got your LinkedIn profile going? And they kind of look at me all weird, and then I say, you need to specialize. Let me give you a tip here. There's about 400 of you all studying the same thing. And if you don't specialize now or start to think about your specialization, you're going to be standing in line with 300 other people trying to get a job. Think outside the box now. And then I kind of give them these tips about setting up your LinkedIn profile. Don't worry about your CV, because most companies don't read CVs or cover letters. They go and look at Facebook, they look at their Twitter account, they look at LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So, it's these kind of things that they're coming thinking they're going to learn about disabilities, and then they're going, oh hell, I'm learning about life right now. And it's one of the things that we try and do is besides that subtle difference of giving them skill sets that are going to set them up for their lives and for their future careers, is to also say, hey, look after yourself. Working in our organization is emotionally, physically, and spiritually draining. It is. It's just the nature of the beast, and it's super rewarding, and I cry a lot. I genuinely cry a lot because there's so many beautiful success stories almost every day. I literally just before the call got sent a video of one of my coaches with an athlete that's done everything on the Concept 2 rower today by himself, and her comment was, look at Jack getting more independent. Gosh. So
Yep.
It's these kind of things where you go, wow, if we're changing people's lives, not only the clients' lives, but also the students, then we're having a double whammy, like you say, on that community across everybody. And it's just, people say I give away too much, and maybe that's the philanthropist in me, but it's just so cool to do it, because if you're going to come out of something a better person, well then, hey, we all score. Yep. I score, you score, everybody's happy. So yeah, I kind of agree with you there.
Yeah, and you know what? It's that's an interesting point that you made about kind of giving away stuff for free, because I find I was watching something recently with success thing, and it was with someone massively successful. I think it was a social media post, and they kind of shared that one thing to success is if you have an issue giving away stuff for free, like quit now. Because you're going to have to do that as part of the business. And if you're doing it reluctantly, or you're doing it for something you don't care about, you're not passionate about, like, stop, because you're going to have to give away stuff free. If you're not passionate about sharing your knowledge, your information, I get this a lot in leadership. Same thing, right? Like you just want to share that stuff and get it out there to the world. So it's, and everyone benefits, because look at the end result of the amazing things you're doing from sharing what you're passionate about, whether someone's writing you a check for it or not. Right. So I think that's a massively important point. And I think another good learning tip here before I ask a few more questions that I've got written down is the point you made about life learning. So this is key. Life learning. Then consider this free life learning on this podcast is worry about important things. Like Mike said, LinkedIn profiles, specialize in something, figure out your niche, stop posting stupid shit on social media, because that's where people are going to go start looking. We all learned that lesson as we were I think I was definitely in that like transitional, like social media happened, and I was, I guess I would have been in my 20s. I guess I'm nearly 40. So yeah, mid 20s, whatever, early 20s. And yeah, you post stupid shit on social media, and then now everyone's figuring it out. We were like the experiment. And now everyone's like, oh yeah, you shouldn't have done that when you were 25. I'm like, that's great, but it was 15 years ago. I didn't know how big it was going to be. The world was going to be governed by social media. So yeah, so important. And you said about the tear jerking. This one will get you for sure. So when I was talking to Kim Van Ryn, who was on the show, so shout out to Kim if she's listening. She shared a story where she's having a Zoom Christmas party this year for all of the participants in her program and her support programs. And she was just sharing how in previous years when we could have live, when when in North America anyway, we could have live in-person parties. She would host Christmas parties for all of the people in her program, and a lot of these were, you know, teenagers. They were 17, 18, 19, and they were coming to a party for the first time because they were managing autism, or they were managing something, you know, similar. And like she said, is these kids have never been invited to a party before, because apparently they're different, and no one's invited them. It's the first time. And she was sharing these stories, and I was already tearing up. And then she said, last year after I held the party, one of my participants, she was, I think the boy was 19. His mum calls her and says, in absolute floods of tears, and she's like, I just realized that I'm driving to a New Year's Eve party to pick up my 19-year-old son. I'm now like every other mum, and it's the first time I've ever felt like every other mum. And awesome. I was done. Like, I put the mic went on mute, and I'm like, just let her talk. I'm like, I'm gonna just sit back here. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. And just hearing those things are things that maybe, you know, I consider myself to live a very privileged life. You know, I live in an affluent part of the world, and I'm fortunate to have, you know, a house and a healthy family and everything else. So maybe I don't get enough exposure to those things. So when I hear those stories, and especially when it's about kids, and, you know, you're a parent too, you get it. You can't help but feel impacted by that and want to do more. So I want to do more. So that's my mission. I learn a little bit more. Some important messages there. So a couple of things that I was just jotting away and writing some things down. And one of the things that I wrote down in big capital letters here on my notepad was mindset and kind of approach. And what I wonder is, when you live with the optimism, energy, the infectiousness of your passion behind everything you do, where does that come from? And I think the question, if we make it a bit more micro, is, I guess, what was imprinted on you? Where were you influenced as a kid growing up in SA? And how did that journey? Because obviously we started kind of in the like professional thing, and I wonder if there's a bit of that journey where there's some great influences, and maybe who influenced you? Who was it that kind of, or is it just, did you just wake up and you're like, all right, this is me. I'm optimistic and happy, or is there things influencing it?
My earliest memory was doing a walk not too far from the house, and I idolized my uncle. And he was Uncle Leon was a voiceover. He had this beautiful voice, and he did voiceovers for TV shows or something. I forget what it was. And I'll never forget him saying something. I was just about to go to the army. So I was 17, about to head off to the army. And I remember him saying, do not be a stick, be the grass that moves. If you're the stick, the wind's going to snap you. So kind of like, get yourself together. And, but he kind of, over the years, we weren't super tight, but he just had this demeanor about him that there was always something good. And I catch myself, you know, the story, you practice what you preach kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know, Gareth. I think from that moment, that's a vivid memory I have. But from then, I've always dabbled in self-help stuff, psychology, positive psychology, all of that kind of good stuff. I mean, I've got a bookshelf of tons of the stuff over there. I don't remember everything, but I remember the things that stick. You know, Stephen Covey's highly effective 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. As a Man Thinketh. What was his name? Anyway, a lot of these kind of little snippets come along. I've always kind of had that energy. I don't know, you know, I've always been that energy kind of dude, and I've always been one to care for others. So if I used to mountain bike kind of competitively as well, but if there was somebody new with us that wasn't doing so well, I'd drop off. I wasn't competing anymore. I was now assisting and making them have fun, getting them to enjoy the process. So that mindset of caring for others or uplifting others humbly and without any seeking of reward, I don't know where that comes from. It's always just been in me. And maybe it's from my mother, bless her soul, who passed a couple of weeks ago. But you know, she would be the person that would walk along the beach and all stray dogs and kids would come up to her. You know, she just had this, like, this magnetism. How do I keep it energy going? I have not done well this year. I will be honest. I've really struggled this year, and I honestly feel like I'm pretty burnt out. For 8 years now, I haven't really had a decent holiday, a break away from anything. And yet I still find that as soon as I've got my outfit on and a client's about to come in, and I'm usually 40 minutes ready for my clients ahead of schedule, that hasn't changed either. I don't know, I just get G'd up and I go for it. And it's whether I have students that I've got to engage with, or I'm engaging with professors or doctors or anybody. It's kind of, I enjoy listening to people, and I've always had this thing where I try and take some good quality that the other person's got and apply it to myself. And I try to keep building those qualities in myself all the time. So some folk that know me will go, Mike, you're always kind of worried and being overly prepared. Well, that's not a bad thing either. It keeps me sharp.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if I let it get away from me, I would probably be a nervous wreck about everything and be panicking about everything, but I don't. And it's a fine balance. But boy, what a great question. Where's the influence? I think it's about wanting to change and learning to embrace change. I think that's one of the things I've learned. I've learned to embrace that change is inevitable. It's always going to be there, and seek out the change, because it's the I remember when I was doing a little bit of sales leadership and training, I saw this wonderful graph. It's the sigmoid curve, and you've got to have the second curve. So when you're starting a new business, you go through that exciting hockey stick curve, and then you suddenly getting up and you become the rules are coming into the business, and then suddenly your business shuts down and you get sold or bought out or whatever. And it's to keep having that second curve early on while you're still developing. So seek out the change. So I kind of have these days where I'm going, okay, everything's running too smoothly. What now? My whiteboard over here has got a whole bunch of stuff on it, and I have a moment and I go, oh, Mike, you need to up things up. And true as nuts, if I don't action on that, somebody will say, hey, Mike, no, I'm on the flip side of your social media story. You haven't put another post up, Mike. Come on, dude, get going. One a week. Or procrastinating about doing a proposal because I enjoy coaching. So my latest mindset thing that I'm busy working with is breaking my founder syndrome. So having got to where I've got to now is all fine and well, but to grow the business exponentially more, I need to stop doing everything. I can't be coaching all the time. I can't, it's just not possible. We've been self-funded up until now. I'm not a charity, and I have to start writing grants. I've got to learn a new skill. So, that's the nervousness in me coming out. I'm going, oh, what am I going to do now? So, your listeners understand the context of this is I'm dyslexic. So for me, writing is a problem. I can talk pretty good, but writing stuff down, I get nervous. I do. Grammarly is a cool app. If you're not using, but and it's dealing with the goldfish in the bowl. There's a goldfish in the bowl. I'm dyslexic, so Mike, it's not a problem to write that, but it's getting the story right and articulating it in a way, in written word, that somebody's going to read that and go, wow, yes, we want to fund this initiative or whatever it is. So I had that same issue with mindset, and I think it's a human age thing. Is how come you have I'll give you a story. For example, we have folk that come in that have had a spinal cord injury. In my knowledge, in my experience, and there's some super smart people out there with way more experience, but in my experience, I've noticed some folk embrace it. They get up and they just carry on and live life as if it was nothing had happened. Then others really, really struggle. They really struggle with the change. They struggle with their whole world of what's going on. And battle to get back into the game, and it impacts their life all of their life, and there's stories upon stories upon stories I could share with you, as to how come, and it fascinates me, how come persons A, B, C, and D have that mindset to get up and go, get back on the horse to conquer it. And then there's others that have a similar experience and it just floors them. I just, that's something for the psychologist to probably, and there's probably be some behavioral stuff around that, but it fascinates me.
Yeah.
And when I do a workout, I'm often role playing my clients, because you know what? They never give up. They train harder than any able-bodied person at any of the gyms that I work at. There's, without a shadow of a doubt in my mind, I would put any of my my folk up against an able-bodied in a workout, and they will just blow the socks off the folk, because they just crack on. They just get the job done. There's no bitching and moaning and carrying on, and I'm tired, and
I can picture that for sure. I think I don't know, again, if there's any psychologists can have a field day listening to this, but I would make the assumption that that's based on the level of gratitude they have for their ability and their environment, and where we would definitely take that shit for granted when we're able-bodied, 100%. So many people do that. And one thing that I circled something here on my notes, and it's something actually that I recorded a podcast, a solo show about a few months ago, a little kind of weekend wisdom post that we like to do, and it was something that was going around in my head, and I've shared it with a couple of guests. I'm definitely living out on this quote with everyone right now, but I'm drawing towards these two things that are kind of, this is maybe a bit existential, but growing as a person, or growth, and serving to serve others. And you touched on both these things when I asked you about passion and energy and mindset. You touch very heavily on both these things, the growing element and then the ability to serve others. And this comes through, and this for me is a learning thing, and interesting enough, I have very mild dyslexia as well. So for me, learning was a struggle, and I never found anything or that I wanted to really learn about, or anyone who could find a great way to teach me those things, or so I could find something. So I struggled with that a lot learning through school, and I didn't really feel like I was able to grow my knowledge very much. So I was very stuck in this limiting belief in my 20s. And as a kind of teenager, and you touched on that a little bit as well, with obviously learning difficulties. However, there's still been a massive amount of growth that you've been through, and it's in finding something you're passionate about, right? So whether that's through martial arts, whether that's through fitness, whether that's through whatever it is. And then the other thing you touched on was serving others. And in my opinion, and this is what the podcast episode was about, is we are either growing or we are serving. And those for me is kind of the meaning of life.
Yeah,
we're doing those things. And I believe that when you find something you're passionate about, you will learn more about it, and that will branch into other things, right? Like I love fitness and health. It's been my life for 20 years plus now. However, part of that is communicating and supporting others and sharing stories, and I get a lot of energy out of sharing those stories. Hence now I host a podcast, because it's very similar. It's different. I'm talking about different things. I'm talking about fitness as well, but it's still a very similar outlet in that. So it's still serving other people, and it's enabling me to grow, because I'm learning new skills and I'm learning all these amazing things I didn't know. So when you and this is the kind of message that I think, when people ask me, where do you get any energy from? Why are you so optimistic? Why do you wake up? How can you get up at 5 a.m. every day and do those things that need to be done? And I'm like, because I am passionate about life and the things I do. That's it. There's no magic. Like I can't sell you motivation in a bottle. Like, it's impossible. No one's motivated all the time, but if we're passionate, and I believe if we do those two things, and actually, funny enough, on the episode, I touched on how we're either doing one or the other, and it was a lot about self-care too. So you need to take time to grow yourself, because then you're able to serve better. If you spend too much, like I did in my 20s, you spend all your time serving 15 hours a day as a personal trainer on the gym floor, and you don't do enough growing, your service diminishes. And it was interesting, when I recorded a show last week with a guest, we were talking about how actually those two things can work at the same time. So that was an interesting take on it as well, which I was kind of new, because I was very adamant that I had it solved. I had the meaning of life set, which apparently is not the case and will never probably be. But I think I was on the right path and when we talk about fulfillment, I think it was going down that path. So I just think that was very interesting that you spoke on both those things. So, and for me as well, I think I love about this conversation and our conversations, although we were 10 years ago or whatever, when we worked together, is the very it's very heart on the sleeve. Like, you talk from the heart, and you spoke about obviously your uncle's impact, and
Yeah.
it's I wonder whether you obviously mentioned your mum, rest in peace, paradise, however you prefer. Um, was she a heart on the sleeve kind of person? Is that where you got it from?
Yeah, I reckon very much so.
Yeah.
My dad was the pragmatic kind of focused dude, and my mum was the emotional bunny like me.
Yeah.
So yeah, oh, absolutely. And I think and I like what you said about the gratitude, and I kind of the gratitude wrapped around serving and growing, sprinkled with a bit of humility doesn't do anybody any harm, and somebody said to me, you've really got to get going. Uh, who's it? Is it Vaynerchuk, Gary
Oh,
Vaynerchuk?
yeah. Yeah.
It was like, go hard, kind of. And I was like, whoa. And one guy said to me, you know what? You will get there and be successful. You're just going to do it at your pace. There's another way of doing this, and that is follow this method and this hardness, and you got to do this and this and this and this and this. And the thing is, I couldn't do it because I'm relying on my clients to help me get there, and they are the source of so much of my growth and my serving is from them. And I'm grateful for them, and very humbled to do what I do, get up to do what I do every day. But yeah, I kind of the subtlety to listen to other people. So something I've picked up recently, Gareth, which is kind of touching on what you speaking about, is learning that if I just focus on the strength and conditioning, and I'm focusing on adapting and adjusting movement patterns for folk with differently abled needs, I'm doing myself a disservice. Let me explain. It's still a human being, and that human being has skeletons in the closet. And there's kind of a thing that I do have going for me, and I'm pretty intuitive, and I can smell a rat a mile away, and I can know that there's something going on inside of you pretty quickly. And realizing, for example, within the teenage set, there is a lot of mental health stuff going on. The number of people that I'm seeing self-harming, both my student nurses and some of my clients, body shame issues, the frustration to deal and accept this disability, be it acquired or congenital. Just the struggle is real. The struggle is massively real, and to apply some humanness to these sessions is paramount. It's kind of you and I have the same frame set when I talk about some of the PTs that you and I witnessed at Les Mills. In no way can you run a PT session like that, or a class session like that with these folk. It's not going to happen, and it's when you're working with the folk with autism, and the wiring is just a bit fused up, and we're all just having a moment. It's just sit there, be quiet, let them just organize and just sort out that sensory stuff or whatever's going on, and let's carry on. It's patience is probably one of the biggest virtues that I've had to learn in this game. Is patience, but trust the process. When I have a young man living with CP say to me the other day, you know what, Mike, I can now walk down the stairs without holding the handrail. So thank you for getting me stronger and helping me get, like, whoa, cool, dude. you know, um, and it's things like that when you go, wow, the process has had its way. It's Mike, you're doing the right thing, and it's kind of that little reassurance, because not often that we get a pat on the back from anybody, but that those little moments you go, wow, yeah, just be nice, be human, engage. Hey, we're going to do some stuff, cool. And then a couple of months down the line, there's these success stories come up. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
that's so impactful. We all need that. And yes, do we have to change our trajectory, or do we have to live for validation? No. However, we all like to get that little bit. And I always like, this is one of my favorite words, permission. It gives us permission to continue
Yes.
being who we are, doing what we do, showing up in the world. And sometimes we do need a little bit of validation. Sometimes we need someone. Sometimes I need, I'll have the odd guest that might say, actually, you got an email recently from a previous guest, and we were just communicating about something, and they said to me, "Oh, I just wanted to thank you again for coming on the show. Like, you such a great job as a host. You made me feel so comfortable. You made it." And I'm just like, I don't need that, but it made the next show I recorded the day after I got that email was 10 times better than the one before.
Oh, fantastic.
Because
awesome.
it fed me, right? And I was like, yes, I'm going to keep doing it. I am doing a good job. This is coming across well. It's making a difference. Like, it's so impactful. And like you said, I want to loop back to the patience thing before I forget, because it's like it's at the front of my head right now. That is such an important lesson. Like, and I saw a post the other day. So, this is a funny weaving story, because you mentioned Gary Vaynerchuk. I had Jordan Syatt on the call last week. Jordan Syatt is Gary Vaynerchuk's personal trainer.
Oh, right.
So I recorded with Jordan last week, and we were talking about the patience thing, and he actually made a really interesting post a few weeks back that we were laughing about, where it was like, it was a general post to your average fitness person. It was like, you don't need crash diets, you don't need fads, you don't need supplements, you don't need any of these things. What you need is to be patient. You need to be patient. And we come back to the gratitude thing, right? Like, these people are being so patient because walking down the stairs without the rail is such a massive thing that they're so grateful for. Yeah. However, the person that, exercised 3 times a week and, went on a diet for three weeks and hasn't lost 50 pounds is impatient and quits, because there's no gratitude for where we're at, what we have, and we overcomplicate it, and then we get stuck in this impatient world. And unfortunately, the world we live, unfortunately, the world we live in doesn't allow for a lot of patience right now. So I think we're all exposed to instant gratification, and that isn't helping. Yeah. But yeah, we all need to be patient. It's like me wanting 1 million downloads on my podcast in the first year. Like, unless I'm a celebrity with, and a celebrity starts a podcast, they probably get 1 million downloads. But you don't get to be Joe Rogan with the highest podcast in the world in the first few months you do it. You have to keep going. You have to keep, and those little bits of permission help that, right? They help us to continue. So important. So I got a very selfish question that I'd like to know. So it's two parts. The first question is, you spoke a little bit, you obviously touched on, your amazing accomplishments in martial arts and competing for South Africa, and you mentioned traditional jiu-jitsu. So I've got a 2-part question. Number one, how does traditional jiu-jitsu vary from the very popularized Brazilian jiu-jitsu that we see a lot in the media right now? That's part 1 of the question. Part 2 of the question is, what did you learn the most from jiu-jitsu and a world in martial arts? What was your number 1 lesson?
Sorry, can you just repeat question 2? You froze for a second.
Oh yeah. What was your biggest lesson you learned from competing in jiu-jitsu and training and everything that comes with it?
So the difference between the two is, if you can imagine a samurai warrior back in the days of the big Japanese empires, they would be trained in pretty much everything. So kind of like The Last Samurai with old Tom, what's his name?
Oh, who it was now in that.
Mission Impossible.
Tom Cruise.
Thank you.
Shout out to Tom Cruise.
Yeah. So The Last Samurai in that movie kind of showed you. So, traditional, the style that I studied, Taekwondo, they wanted to recreate that. If I lost my swords, what would the guy do? So hence the judo, the grappling, the stick and knife fighting, with a kind of a self-defense thing, where Brazilian jiu-jitsu is very focused on the grappling side of things, and it's obviously being super popularized by the Gracie and the Machado family in Brazil. And up until about 3 weeks ago, I was still trying to get my weekly roll in. That's the difference really between the two, is that we were trying to reenact and learn all the skills that the samurai would have learned, versus Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is purely grappling with a takedown, so it's a street fight kind of thing, and obviously popularized now within the UFC, etc.
Yeah,
which is interesting. They've gone back to stand-up more so than they are doing the takedown. What's the greatest lesson I learned? That would be my first international competition. I didn't realize in the fight that I was doing that I was actually in the lead until someone came and whispered in my ear and said, "You just got to win this next bout and you will walk away with the gold medal." And the style of the fighting was, I didn't know the attack, didn't know what was coming at me, and my uki or person goes off and gets told by the umpire how to attack me, and I, within a split second, have got to defend myself and show control, show force, and finish off. And my opponent was a German woman on the mat with me, and she beat my ass. And I was grumpy as, because I remember that day vividly, because I took my eye off the ball. Ego got in the way, and I remember it, and I just remember overthinking what I had to do, and it was the sloppiest demonstration I'd ever done. And to me, is don't let your ego get the better of you, because it'll pull you down and it'll smack. If you're focusing on those kind of things and puffity puff, it's going to bite you. That's my biggest lesson I learned there. Good on her for beating me.
Yeah, don't let your ego get in the way. Yeah, it's really interesting actually. I've been playing around with it. I haven't done any martial arts probably 10 years maybe. I think actually last time I committed to doing it pretty like, stringently and disciplined was back in New Zealand.
Wow.
I trained with Dion at Les Mills Victoria for a while, so we did some Muay Thai, and I'd done some boxing and some stuff. I never gelled very much with the and I hesitate to say aggressive nature of it, but for me the reason why I never competed or anything, because the idea of punching someone in the face or kicking somebody, I had kind of I like the discipline, I like the skill set, I like all the things you get from it. So I'm being very, very drawn to Jiu-Jitsu. And, you know, it's very popularized right now. But as I've looked into it and I've kind of watched a little bit and sat back, because I'm a bit of a cautious person most of the time, is understanding that it's very much, just for example, and the reason why it interests me a lot is because I think I wouldn't want to be in a scenario where the only way I could, and I'm sure it's not the only thing you learn in those more kind of heavy contact style striking disciplines, but I wouldn't want to have to get involved in something by using my hands and my fists to disable somebody. However, jiu-jitsu being heavily about, you know, grappling and takedowns and, you know, submissions, it really appeals to me, because I feel like it's a skill where I can stop anything happening that needed to happen. Not that I get in those situations very often, and obviously the discipline, and like you said, it, from my understanding, is you know, those submission-based martial arts are extremely humbling.
Yeah, it is, and I think, you know, you've touched on something there. It's a discipline. You know, you don't just get a black belt. I think within the Gracie Foundation, it's in excess of 10 plus years. You know, to get that level, it is exceptionally technical, very technical. So bearing in mind that that's all they focus on. So when I go and do BJJ, I just get my ass handed to me, because I did a whole bunch of other stuff, which helps. But when those guys are focused and they're technical masters at it, you're just a rag doll, man. They just tie you up in 5 seconds flat. It's kind of cool. But I just think the beauty of it is, and this is why I enjoy the military so much, and also why I enjoyed probably the martial arts, is because of that regimented routine, that discipline. It has stood me in good for the rest of my life and in my business. You know, the discipline to get up every morning to go to 5 o'clock to go and work with clients, that's a discipline. You know, that's something I'm everly grateful to my parents for instilling in me, is that sense of pride, that sense of ownership of what it is that you're doing in life. You know, everything that happens to us is what we do to ourselves. You know, we're the masters of what happens to us. And I have a funny story for you, is that my sensei said the best way to win a fight is by 100 meters. So if you're 100 meters ahead of the situation, there's no fight. You're won. You're good. So practice. But yeah, I think that's important. just for folk to be, we're coming back to the mindset thing now, is you are the master of where you're going to end up, and it's kind of allow yourself to be the chameleon, to change, but to keep going. I call it flexing. So when you flex your social styles model, for example, whether you're an expressive analytical driver or amiable or a peacock or whichever model you're looking at, is the capacity to flex to the style. So I'm exceptionally intimidated by very powerful, driven kind of people, because I'm an amiable, psychologically and in the lab. But over the years of practicing to be something that you're not has allowed me to develop the skill set. So when I meet those kind of folk, I'm not intimidated anymore. It's a skill that you have to learn, is to flex so as to make the mindset that you're working with is an adult mindset. So you're working not as an emotional child, or not as a parent, I told you so, critical or whatever, but it's this kind of modeling that gives you the capacity to communicate. And if we can communicate better, the world, be that verbal or non-verbal in my world, it's makes the world a better place. And it's discipline is one of those foundational pillars, I think. And then you just bolt on all the other stuff, and you just come out of the other side a better human being.
Yeah, and communication, that's not only the verbal, the non-verbal, such an important distinction there between those two things, because they are very different. And whether that person's able to verbally communicate or not, there's a lot to be said in the way we present ourselves and how we show up, which communicates a lot. It's so important. I love that you touched on discipline, and that's a big thing for me, I think, with this kind of, there's something burning in me that wants to go back to something different. And don't get me wrong, there's a place for lifting weights and jumping around and doing all those things that I love to do. However, I also, and it's not that I know everything about that stuff. I don't know everything about moving a barbell. I don't know everything about that HIIT style training, whatever it is that I do. However, I feel like I'm at the point now where I'm not being drawn to figure more stuff out for my own training. For my clients, yes. For my own training, not so much. I feel like I'm being pulled away, and that's why I'm being pulled towards that. And I love the discipline element. That's a big thing for me, because it's very easy for me to talk myself out of something. However, I have a good schedule, and I'm pretty disciplined in what I do every day. And there's lots of things there's boxes I need to tick, and there's things I need to get done. However, I can coast through my training. Sometimes I need someone to hand my ass to me, and I need to drag myself there to do it. And it's just the way it is, right? Like, and that's, and being coached in the past by many people has been, been a privilege. And I think that's important. The discipline thing interests me. So here's a question. I am quite, Jocko Willink, that you've no doubt heard of, ex-Navy SEAL. So he has a book called Discipline Equals Freedom. And this is something that resonates with me. And, I like to just hear other people's thoughts on it, because a lot of people hear discipline and they think that it's so rigid, and that when you're disciplined, there's no flexibility. And, and I get this a lot, because people train, and you'll know, coaching people, as well, for the many years that you have, is people are allergic to that word, because they think that means they can't go out the weekend. They can't have a glass of wine. They can't take a day off training. They think that discipline means that it's going to be boring. And obviously Jocko Willink speaks about how it actually creates freedom in your life. And I kind of have adapted what he says, but I'm just crediting him with the initial statement. I talk about how my discipline, people ask that, how do you stay on track? How do you stay in shape? I'm like, because I am disciplined, because I get up at 5 a.m. I do my workout. I go out for my walk with the dog. I listen to my audiobooks, whatever it is I'm doing, I get this stuff done early in the day. And I specifically think it's about being early in the day personally. I get all that stuff done. I stay disciplined with my schedule. I make sure I eat well. 80% of the time I've got really good meals that I'm prepping, and that creates freedom. Because people are like, well, how do you spend all weekend, like going out for dinner and doing stuff like that, or not working out and still being in shape? I'm like, but you need to understand that discipline creates that. Yes. And I love to get your kind of take on that, because it always intrigues me to other people in the world of coaching.
Yeah, I agree. Discipline is important, and I think the word on the flip side, I'm a big believer of yin and yang, and opposites, and uh, is the other word balance. You know, with discipline, you know, if I look at the world of the military, for example, yes, we train hard, and that's discipline for rules in order to stay safe, and to protect your mates. The discipline of the martial arts is to learn the break falls so you don't land hard and hurt yourself. You know, there's a balance there, and I think, yeah, I mean, cut yourself some slack.
Yeah.
That's what I think. I think the word discipline does probably invoke kind of the wrong idea around things. And again, I come back to what I said earlier. You know, the most powerful word in the universe to any human being is a very simple word, and it's called choice. You get to choose or make a choice as to what you're going to do on the day and how you're going to do things. If you want to get out of a negative mindset into a positive mindset, it's a choice. You've got to make that choice. You've then got to action on that choice. And if you don't action, that's the discipline, then you're not going to get that change that you're desperately seeking in your life. So do I listen to music in my car? Hell no. I listen to Blinkist. I listen to books. I listen to interesting topics. Podcasts, you know, there's this one called We Make a Difference. I don't know if you've, anyway, great one. But you know, there's to me, that's my choice, because I want to keep learning in order to benefit my clients. Oh, but at the same time, I also get to score out of this as well. Oh, isn't that funny? You know, so I think it's taken me a long time. Let me put it to you this way. I was so disciplined when I was younger. I even used to iron the pillowcases and the tea towels. Nobody was allowed to touch my iron, you know. It's kind of crazy. I was that anal about it. That's too much, okay? Nowadays, I don't give a shit about freaking tea towels. But my point is that I still wash my clothes and I still hang them up in a way that it looks nice, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not going to waste time doing things that are not going to bring me joy and that are not going to make me grow and feel happier. And that's my choice. And I kind of try and instill this to a lot of people, because a lot of people are still walking around with what we call negative whispers from their childhood or from traumatic experiences in their life, and are shackled, literally shackled to those negative whispers. But to get to those positive whispers, it's a very simple choice to move across and to get that done. But I can enlighten someone to that, but I can't make them do that.
Yeah.
You know, in our world, we have this thing within the disability sector. We hate the following. You're so inspiring. My God, you know, we hate it. We call it inspirational porn. We hate it. All right. Honestly hate it. So if I have anybody that says that to me, or they're so inspiring, I go, cool. Inspire means cause to action. What are you going to do about it? If it inspired you to do what are you going to actually do about it? Because inspiring means take an action. And it freaks me out. And I love catching people out on it, because it's all fine and well to be inspired, but no, you need to action that. You need to take action in order to do it. So, you know, the great documentary that came out during the lockdown, Rising Phoenix, fantastic doco. The number of people that, oh man, this is so inspiring. I want to write to each one of them. Well, why aren't you training? Why aren't you getting ready to go to the Olympics? Why aren't you getting out there to live a better life? You know, make action. And I think that's the thing with the discipline side of things from the special forces world, is it's action, and action is intent. You know, I'm doing something with intent. What am I doing? You know, you sound like you've got a pretty good routine going there, because there's an intent behind it. The words goals and plans, a little bit airy fairy in my world, but kind of, what is the intent? Where do you want to go? You know, what is it you're going to do with yourself? And it's just a couple of buzzwords that are there. And I think the discipline is, again, it's a choice. I think you make that choice as to if you're going to live that fuller, richer life or not.
Yeah, I love that. And it's definitely I love that it's kind of, you know, on that choice thing. And I think that's where, when you can be disciplined, and you can, you know, whether it's keeping that schedule or keeping, you know, whatever it is that you're being disciplined around, and it's typically around those things, right? It's like it's routine and schedule. And it is a choice, and it's a, you know, like I kind of share this, is when you do those things and then you don't do them. Like today was lazy. Like we probably spent 3 hours on the couch today as a family. We watched some movies this morning. We did go for a walk, and then we ate a whole heap of food. We had popcorn. We watched some more TV. Like we had a pretty lazy day. Like for me, getting
Cool.
like 7,000 steps for me is like unheard of. Like I've normally done that by 8 a.m. So earlier maybe. So that's a day where I'm not. But here's the thing: is people say, "Well, but you know, you're so disciplined." I'm like, "Yeah, but there's days like that." But exactly to your point, what I'm gonna do is in like you know probably 40 minutes from now, I'll be in my bed. I would have journaled a little bit. I'll be reading my book. I'll be asleep by 10. I'll be up at 5. I will continue
Yeah.
back, and I'll make a choice. I'm not now going to say, well, I've done all this all day, so now I'm going to go and eat, you know, another 2,000 calories of food and lay on the couch and watch more TV, get to bed late, and then not get up in the morning. So I'm making a choice because I made a choice to be lazy because I hung out with a 3-year-old, and what a 3-year-olds like to do, they like to watch TV and eat popcorn. So we did it.
Cool.
So it's that, right? It's the choice. I made a choice to do that, and I'm going to make a choice to get back on board. And it makes me think of the toothbrush analogy, like brushing your teeth, which I always reference to people. Is when people talk about discipline, schedule, and routine and habits. Is, well, you brush your teeth twice a day, and you've been doing it since you were a toddler. And if you come in one night at midnight and you're, you know, steaming drunk and you pass out on the couch and you don't brush your teeth, you don't wake up in the morning and say, well, I'm not going to brush my teeth ever again now because I didn't brush them yesterday. Like that doesn't happen. It's just a habit that you've made part of your life. It's habitual. You just brush your teeth again and you missed it once and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
People don't see it like that. I'm like, that's your life. That's movement. That's exercise. That's nutrition. That's, you know, showing up. It's mindset. Like all those things. You can just go to make a choice to go back to it. So that is such an insightful point, and I love it. And one other thing I want to touch on is, here's another thing. So I'm definitely with you with the inspiration, motivation thing. The motivation thing is what drives me crazy when people say that. Oh, you're so motivating. I'm like, no. I'm like, you motivate you, not me. I don't motivate people. You have to motivate yourself. I can't do that for you. Like, I can't change you. I can't make you do that. And the inspire thing is key. And I love that it's a call to action. That's always the word I use. And people say, you know, why are you so motivating? I'm like, I'm not motivating. You motivate yourself. I can inspire you. And to your point, that means you're going to take action. So if I'm inspiring it, it means you're going to do it because you've chosen to do it.
Yeah,
that's the
100%.
only way you're going to get fitter, get healthier. And that's obviously the world I live in. It could be anything, right? So important. And I think that's just I just think that's an amazing takeaway for people to kind of wrap up on today. Unless, of course, there's anything else that you would like to share with the listeners, anything else you want to touch on before we kind of wrap up the show.
No, I just want to, all the folk that are out there, just live your best life. Just choose today to live your best day and just be awesome. And make sure you ask someone and tell someone how awesome you are. That's it. It's real simple.
Yeah, isn't it so true? Yeah, we live on the quote at We Start Talking of be the best possible version you can be of yourself, right? And that's, you know, whatever that looks like every day. So yeah, absolutely. Look, I just want to thank you for being on the show. Great conversation. I loved hearing a little bit more about, you know, your journey in the last 10 years where we haven't really been so connected other than through you know, social media, like a lot of us are in the world now. So appreciate the conversation. And as everybody's heard today, I feel inspired and passionate and revved up from this conversation, like I'm sure a lot of people listening do. And that honestly, Mike, is my memory of our conversations on the gym floor, at Les Mills, just having that, you know, sharing those conversations and feeling fired up and passionate about things. So I really appreciate you, and I appreciate your time being on the show today. To everybody listening, please, I hope there's some great takeaways. I hope you were able to, you know, make some notes. If you weren't, do that now if it's safe to do so, because I think there's some great takeaways in the show. I'm going to put all the links so you can find all about what Mike's doing, all the things that happen, all the great kind of initiatives around. And as you heard, around the world, it's growing. And if you're looking to support, you're looking to get involved, go check it out. It's all in the show notes for you to find. If you can give us a like, you can share a rating or a review on wherever you listen to your podcast. We truly appreciate it. Please share on your social media stories, because as I've said, we're not sponsored, we're not backed, we're not paying anyone to get these shows out there. So anything you can do to support that, we truly, truly appreciate it. Other than that, please listen, be the best possible version of yourself you can be. Keep making a difference, and I will catch you on the next episode.